What's going on, guys? This is your children's pastor, Steve Blackson, coming back to you. We're finishing up today on our series of the keys to a healthy spiritual family. This is part number 3, and we're going to be talking about some stuff today that's kind of a little unusual, but they're key points. Okay, these are really big key points. Again, this is also for the adults. Okay, I'm not saying we're going anywhere weird, but what I am saying is this is really for the adults. However, it does affect the kids a lot on what we're about to talk about. So the first thing, we're talking about loyalty and faithfulness to your marriage and your spouse. Loyalty and faithfulness to your marriage and your spouse. Now, if you notice, I got 2 different parts there. Okay, we have the marriage, and then we have the spouse. Okay, so we're going to cover those 2 things. Now, where I'm getting this from is Ephesians chapter 5. We're still in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 31 and 32. And I'm taking this from the Christian Study Bible, or the Christian Standard Bible. And it says, "For this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the 2 will become one flesh." Okay, let's stop right there. Right now, let's stop there. Again, I've already talked about this before, but we are talking about how the loyalty and faithfulness to marriage and your spouse. So let's look at the first part. To marriage, the 2 shall become one. Now, we've all learned in school that if you add 1 and 1, you get 2. But in this case, you're getting 1 and 1, and they become 1. Okay? The 2 shall become one. And because what we're talking about here is the fact that you are one body, one mind, one accord, one thought, one everything. Decisions that you do are going to completely affect your spouse, positive and negative. I tell the kids all the time, there are consequences to actions. We perform an action, either there's going to be a good consequence or a bad consequence. It depends on the actions that we choose. Same way in marriage, okay? And we're talking about this. "For this reason, a man will leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and the 2 shall become one flesh." This mystery is profound, but I'm talking about Christ and the church. Now, I'm not going to get in depth on this one because that one verse to me in itself can hold a whole hour-long discussion. This mystery is profound, but I'm talking about Christ and the church. Throughout this whole thing, what we're looking at in Ephesians chapter 5 is talking about how Christ lived his life, and therefore this is how the church should live its life as well. Okay? And then I'm looking at Ephesians chapter 5, verses 3 and verse 7. "But sexual immorality and any impure or greed should not even be heard of among you, as is proper for the saints." In verse 7, "Therefore do not become their partners." All right. So let's look at the first part. Do you know what happens when one person cheats on another and allows someone else to invade the family, to invade the marriage? Okay, because what we're talking about is the marriage and the spouse. So let's first of all start looking at the marriage part. Okay, so unfortunately it takes 2 to rip a marriage apart. It's usually one person in the marriage and then an entity outside of the marriage. Okay, because it's just the way it is. The 2 became 1, so that 1 is out here, but there's another 1 lurking out here somewhere that part of this 1 is looking over at, and this part is looking over at, and they pull and they rip it apart. It would be the equivalent. I hope I don't need these notes. All right. The 2 become 1. They become 1 at this point. They're 1. They're happy. Everything's going great. Now they're separated, and this piece starts going off over here. Now, is this 1 whole anymore? No, it's not. It's not. It's left. Now, if you notice closely on there, it's jagged edges. It's torn. It's ripped. It hurts. That's what happens in marriage. When the 2 that become 1 are ripped apart because something else looks better over here, that's what you're left with. Torn, jagged edges. Nothing smooth, nothing straight. It's painful. Okay? You rip the marriage apart. Not only that, you rip the family apart. And you may be thinking, you know what I do only affects me, Steve. What I'm doing, it's just between me and my wife, nobody else. It's nobody else's business. You know what? you're halfway right. You're halfway right. Because here's the reality of it, especially when you have kids in there. Okay? I'm going to try to hold this together. I know this on the fact that I deal with a lot of kids that come from divorces. They come from places where they've been pulled out of homes because of the actions of the parents. Let me tell you something, it's a nightmare for your kids. You may think that everything I do only affects me. You know what? It does, but it affects you directly, but there's what we call a ripple effect. When you take a little stone, it can be the smallest stone you can ever find, and you throw it into a body of water that is perfectly smooth and flat. The smallest grain of sand, when it hits that water, will still cause a ripple. And you can see it, and it goes on out for a long ways. If a little grain of sand or a grain of salt can cause a ripple, what do you think that your actions that you're doing in your life do to your family? It's huge. It's a nightmare. It ripples throughout your life. It ripples out through your spouse's life. It ripples throughout your kid's life. It ripples throughout your parents' life. It's something that just doesn't affect you. It affects other people. So first of all, we have to be loyal to our marriage. Okay? We have to be loyal to our marriage. Like I said, I've watched kids grow up in the middle of this. It's not a great thing. It's a hard thing. Secondly, we must have strong moral values. Strong moral values. Infidelity can creep up on marriage because of broken relationships and lack of love for the other. Now, earlier I was talking about the Ephesians chapter 3, and then I skipped down to chapter 5, verses 3, and then I was reading Ephesians chapter 7. Now, if you read in between there's a lot of stuff in there that talks about the issue that I'm looking at strong moral values. It covers all these things that we are not to be, ladies and gentlemen. Matter of fact, I tell you what, let's just don't leave anything up to ambiguity, and we'll just go ahead and read it. But sexual immorality and impure or greed should never be heard among you, as is proper for the saints. Verse 4 says, obscene and foolish talking or crude joking are not suitable, but rather giving thanks. For know that, recognize this, every sexual immoral or impure or greedy person who is an idolater does not have an inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. Did you catch that? Verse 6, let no one deceive you with empty arguments, for God's wrath is coming on the disobedient because of these things. Therefore do not become their partner. Then verse 8, we're going to go a little bit further. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of the light. Okay, there we're talking about those strong moral values. Let's take all the foul language. Let's take all the crude joke. Let's take all the coarse talking. Let's take all the sexual immorality stuff and let's put it to the side. Put it to the side, Christian. There comes a point in life where you must decide, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to live my life. And you have to, whether you like it or not, turn your back on the old you. Because when you are born again, the old you is laid down, but the new you is raised up. The old man is dead, the new man is alive. You must turn away from the things that were the old man. There is no other way you can live your life. You can't walk down the road but leave your foot back here and try to go somewhere else. But many of us want to leave part of our foot, or we want to leave part of our life back here, and we want to come back and visit. You see, when you're born again, you move on. You're a new creature. You're a great new creature. You're perfectly and wonderfully made at that point, ladies and gentlemen. And your life has to start out going away from what you were. But so many times we want to be the Christian, and we want to be now two joined as one, and we start to rub off on the other with our things that are still back over here that are pulling us back. The example I've used with kids before, I get a nice sheet of white paper and I lay it down. I get another sheet of white paper and I lay it down, and I take a pencil and I color that whole sheet in. I hold them both up. I say, what do I have here, boys and girls? Well, you have a white sheet of paper, Mr. Steve. What do I have here? You have a dark sheet of paper, Mr. Steve. And I take the two, and as they become one, just one swipe, and I show it to them again. And the kid's like, whoa. The darkness over there got on the lightness over here. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what happens when you keep on going back over here to the stuff you shouldn't be in. We got to have strong moral values and leave where we were and go to where we're going now as a new creature. Faithfulness to the marriage is a matter of honoring God and His way and preventing a ripping apart of the family that has been joined together. It's part of honoring God and following God. That marriage is showing that you're following what God's design is for the man and the woman. And look, been married 22 years. Has it been great and wonderful? You better believe it. Has there been hiccups along the way? Oh, you better believe it. I'm being real with you. Nothing is ever perfect from the beginning, and it stays that way. But there is coming a day, ladies and gentlemen. There is coming a day where everything will be made perfect again. Just hang in there. It's coming. Now listen, here's a few little research facts I got for you on marriage. Life expectancy of divorced men and women are significantly lower than that of married people. Did you hear that? The life expectancy for divorced men and women are significantly lower than married people. In other words, you're going through a lot of stress and a heartache, it's taking a toll on your body. Number two, a recent study found those who were unhappy but stayed married were more likely to have happy 5 years later than those who divorced. You're going to live longer. It may be tough, guys and girls, but it'll be worth it. The health consequences of divorce are so severe that a Yale researcher concluded that being divorced and a non-smoker is only slightly less dangerous than smoking a pack a day and staying married. Whoo! You live longer smoking a pack a day and staying married than you would getting a divorce. See, there's many other things here. But then I'm going to get down to the second part of this. Children are emotionally scarred and traumatized by divorce. I'm going to get a little personal if I can. Somewhere around the age of 9, 10, my parents got a divorce. Since then, both of them moved on, found great people, and remarried, and doing very well for themselves. I'm proud of all of them. I got married when I was 26. I sat down with my daddy when I came back from my honeymoon, and I was finally able to have an open discussion with my father. From the age of 10 to the age of 26, I held in a lot of stuff. I was able to actually go and have the same discussion with my mother. From the age 10 to the age of 26, I held in a lot of stuff. You see, parents, you don't understand that when you go through divorce, yes, it's something that affects you, it's something that affects your spouse, but you don't understand what you're doing to your kids. There's a lot of heartache, a lot of turmoil, a lot of turbulence that is held within. It's like a small storm brewing inside of that child. And who can they talk to? They don't know. They don't want to offend one parent versus the other. They don't want to show more love to one versus the other. They don't want to come over here and talk to this one that they may be able to have a good conversation with, because then the other one says, well, you don't want to be around me. You can't open up to me. You can't trust me. And so it's a back and forth pull between parents is what the kid feels. Now, are the parents actually doing this? More than likely not. They're not standing on one side pulling here and the other one's pulling this way. But I can tell you, as a child who grew up through that, that's what you feel like. And it's hard. It leaves scars on you. A report on educating students from divorced and single-parent homes by the National Education Association came up with this. The majority of research study indicates for children, divorce and one-parent homes means a higher risk of having problems in school. They have found that out. They've also said, as a group, one-parent children show lower achievement and present more discipline problems than do their two-parent homes in both elementary and high school. They are also more absent more often, late to school more often, and may show more health problems as well. The research is most frequently cited in the education literature about how divorce affects children of the research, and it continues on. Second thing here is children living in a single parent or adult report, report a higher prevalence of activity limiting, and higher rates of disability. You see what I'm saying? The more this goes on, as they become an adult, they have more issues that cause them to have disabilities because of things that are going on in their past. Ladies and gentlemen, it's hard. It's hard to understand unless you've been there. The last part on this, I have the triple threat of marital conflict, divorce, and out of wedlock birth has led a generation of the U.S. children at its greatest risk for poverty, health problems, alienation, and antisocial behavior. That's what you get out of it. You have kids that have mental problems as far as being able to communicate. You have issues where there's antisocial behavior. You actually have health problems, and they have a greater risk of poverty. Now, if you go back and you look at, say, the past 20 years, where divorce was really going on and things were kicking out, and it's still happening today. It's nothing that has stopped, but a lot of it now, we don't even worry about getting married to have a divorce. People just get together and they shack up and they just live that way, so there's really no divorce when they leave each other. But it's producing the same type of children along the way. I'm just being real with you. You see, now here we come down to there's some key points that men and women need to understand for a healthy marriage. Number one, I've got 12 different things here and I'll wrap up. Number one, you got to agree upon trusting one another. You have to agree upon trusting one another. Once you've taken your vows, don't do anything to break that trust. Don't do anything to break that trust. You have both taken vows to be faithful to each other from there on out. Now is the time to believe in the other person and believe in what they've said. Listen, you may have been hurt before. You got a person now. You're going to take your heart and you're going to place them in their hands, and you're going to trust them. That's number one. Number two, accept the fact that you are no longer single. You may not come and go as you please, no matter how much you may complain. You have a responsibility to your spouse now, not just to yourself, and you will be better off the sooner you accept that. Number three, understand that your spouse is not attempting to put a leash on you. Follow that closely. Understand that your spouse is not attempting to put a leash on you. I know you may go back to the second part of this message and where I'm talking about submitting. Okay, wives submitting, but you know it's also husbands submitting to Christ and wives submitting to the husband. If it's done correctly, you never feel a thing. Now, if you have a dominant person that's trying to step into your life and snatch you around and tell you what you're going to do, somebody's not submitting somewhere. It's a simple matter of honoring your commitment, of letting your spouse know when you start worrying. Okay? Or excuse me, of letting your spouse know when to start worrying if you don't want to be cared for or be respected by that person. Number four, wear your wedding ring at all times. Wear it at all times. Now listen, there's some situations, work may be involved, or you're doing a sport or something or another, that you may need to take it off. I learned a long time ago when I was working with the DOT, we were doing the Flint River Bridge on Highway 19, I was testing concrete. I went out there and did all my concrete tests. I had my hands covered in concrete, went down to the river, started washing them off, shook my hands, and lo and behold, it just went sailing out through there and landed in the river. Of which, this is my original one. I dove in the river looking for my ring and actually came back with it. Keep your wedding ring on. It's a sign of everybody going, ooh, he's married, she's married, stay away. Now, will that stop everybody? No. But this is also a remembrance to you that you are married. Don't take it off. Nourish your intimacy with your spouse. If either one of you are experiencing issues with intimacy, talk it through. The earlier you do, the better. It's another one of those things that can sit there and stir up into a storm that will explode one day. There's no need. You can be intimate through loving gestures, hugs, kisses, maybe some private time sometime. And it's a vital part of keeping the two of you one. It is vital. I am the world's worst. I can go walking through anywhere in the world and I'll see Nicole and I'll come up to her, hug her, I'll give her a kiss. There's all kind of stuff. To her, sometimes she's like, don't be doing that in public. I'm like, no, you're my wife. You know what? You are my wife, and I can do that. I probably do it a little too much at times, but hey, she's my wife. I want her to know that she is loved. Little whispers in your spouse's ears. Little notes. Good grief, we've all got phones. You can text your spouse and just let them know, hey, I'm thinking about you today. It goes a long ways. Try it. Number 6, don't stir up any trouble where there's not any. Don't be one of those spouses you're just sitting there one day and you just see how far you can push your spouse until they just explode. And you sit there and go, I just wanted to see if I could get a rise out of you. That's not being a good spouse. See, you're sitting there and you're stirring up trouble where there's not any. And if you think that's helping your relationship with your spouse, you're dead wrong. Don't pick fights just to see what they will say or do. Avoid even the appearance of wrongdoing. Let me tell you something. There comes a point that if you meet someone who's trying to come on to you and maybe even who's is attracted to you, there's no need to panic. However, don't entertain it. Don't hang around it. Don't show interest. Don't come up with funny little lines to say to the person. Don't entertain it at all. Avoid the very appearance of doing anything. Matter of fact, number 8 I've got down here, it says, tell the person who tries to lure you into a relationship with them that you're not interested at all. Period. Use those words. I am not interested. One of the worst things is you can go up and give a half-hearted, gee, I think you're really cute and everything, and man, if I wasn't married, then maybe you and I could get together. You know what? Why don't you just go ahead and go up to your spouse, slap them in the face and say you're not worth it? You know why? Because you know that would hurt. But see, you're doing your little flirting thing over here, and do you think any of this is being loyal or faithful to your marriage or your family? No, it's not. I'll just answer it for you. No, it's not. Number 9, if you can, take your spouse with you. If you know you're going to a place that is going to have an issue where there's a person that's trying to come on to you, or you know this person may be coming around you a whole lot and you may be weak, bring your spouse with you. There's less likely chance for anybody to say or do anything with your spouse around than any other time. They're your spouse. If you can't go somewhere with them, there's an issue. If you're trying to leave them at home so you can go out and have your little fun time with other people, there's an issue. Number 10 I got down here. Leave the situation. Listen, this is no matter if it's a job or a circle of friends. You may have a great circle of friends that you hang out with, and there's people all in there. You may have been friends for a long time. And you know what happens as friends go and they get older and older? They get married. And you still hang out with those friends, but now those friends have spouses of their own. And you still go over to the house, hang out with your buddies or maybe with your girlfriends, and all of a sudden you look and there's an opposite sex there and they're hitting on you, maybe flirting, maybe looking at you. There comes a point, as I was talking earlier, you got to walk away from the old things. You got to get out. You got to leave the situation. You don't slowly leave the situation. You don't want them to walk you out. You get up, you go. And when everybody checks on you later on and says, hey, why did you leave? I had to get out. I had to leave that situation. I have issues I'm trying to protect, and I don't need to be in that situation. Leave. Last 2, number 11 here. Make plans for your future together and revise those plans regularly. Be sure not only to plan, but also do exciting and amazing things. You know, do something that scares you. Do something that's unusual. Do something together that you wouldn't do any other time. You know, maybe one day you wake up and you ride down to Savannah, Georgia on a Saturday morning just because you want to get away with your spouse. Maybe you come in after working outside all day, you jump in the shower, you get cleaned up, you look at your wife and say, honey, come on, we're going to Atlanta today. And they're like, wait a minute, I haven't got ready. You know what, it's okay. Neither have I. We're all, let's just go. And you go and you have some quiet time together. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the greatest things that my wife and I try to do, we got 1 or 2 restaurants we love to go eat at in Columbus. The Salt Cellar and Ma Bella's, and the Loft a little bit. great places we can go, sit down, enjoy a meal, get away, take a little walk around Columbus, go down to the riverfront, and just get away. You have to guard the time with your wife, with your spouse. You have to guard it. You have to be faithful to that. And the last one, and to me the last one is the most important one. You got to communicate. I've gone through all these other things, the keys to a healthy spiritual family, and it comes down to this last one. To me, it's the biggest one. You got to communicate. Men, women don't know what you're thinking. Men have absolutely no idea what you're thinking, okay? We can come up with 1,000 things, but bless your heart, your mind's at 90 miles an hour inside of a ship that is moving at warp speed, and we have no idea what's going on in there. Men, we're not big communicators. At least I know I'm not. That's something I'm working on. My wife, she would love it to death if I could sit down with her at 30 minutes in the morning and an hour at night and just open up everything in my life. I'm trying. Men, we like to sit down and go, my day was fine, everything is good, I feel okay, thank you. And that would sum up everything in our day right there. And we could go ahead and go about the rest of our evening, never have to say another word except for good night, and we would be all right. Women, on the other hand, want and need that communication. You got to. It's part of the other ones in there, the intimacy. Talking to them, they need that. Men, whether you believe it or not, you need it. Men like to say, oh no, I'm tough, I can handle all this stuff, and we take a lot of pressure, we take a lot of stress, we combine it all inside of ourselves and we try to enjoy ourselves. When inside we got our own little turmoil going. You need to talk. You need to let it out. And a lot of times, guys, let me go ahead and clarify this. Your wife doesn't want you to solve every problem there is. They just want to have somewhere to release it. Don't try to solve everything. Just listen. Communicate. Talk. Which, that brings me to an end. The keys to a healthy spiritual family. Number one, God is to be the foundation on which the family is built, because He is our firm foundation. Number two, commitment to a lifelong marriage. We need to commit to submit. And lastly, what I've talked about here today is loyalty to faithfulness, to your marriage, and to your spouse. Ladies and gentlemen, the things I've talked about over the past 3 weeks are not easy. It takes effort, it takes time, it takes willingness, it takes determination. But if you do it, you're going to grow the most beautiful, healthy marriage you've ever seen. You're going to be that person that your great-grandkids are going to look at one day and go, I want to be like them. You know, they've been married over 70 years. Man, I pray for the day I will be 96. I pray that I see the day that my great-grandkids can look at me and go, you see that old guy? He's been married to that old woman right there for 70 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I pray that your family can say the same thing about you. I love y'all. Hope to see you again. Until next time, my name's Steve Blackson, and I love you. Bye-bye.